Hello, warriors. Happy almost end of October. Look, I just wanted to have a quick follow-up discussion. I had invited some questions and comments on one of my latest articles. It was called The O Word. It was all about the overreach from the federal government through our Department of Health and Human Services at a state level. And it was supposed to be how it's all done in the name of education, how this is going to impact not only those who are in our public school systems, but those who are outside of our public systems as well. Now, I did get a couple of questions. One is from Susan, and she said that we need a parent with standing to sue. And Susan, I could not agree more. In fact, those of us who've been working in child abuse in the classroom, and you can find that at childabuseintheclassroom.org, I believe it is. We're also on Facebook. That's one of the things that we've been asking for months now, is a family or a parent who has a child who is absolutely being devastated by the public education system or the systems related to public education, which are available to private schools, home schools, parochial schools, hybrid schools, online schools, any of these types of schools. Because as we know, in the Every Student Succeeds Act, there were 3 U.S. departments that were given major power increases. The one that got the most increase in power was not the Department of Education. It was the Department of Health and Human Services. And we're seeing why, and that is because through the Every Student Succeeds Act, there were mandates in there for in-home visits because, after all, parents had to be assessed to see if they were going to be teaching to college and career readiness. Well, these in-home visits that the Department of Health and Human Services, through the Centers for Medicaid, Medicare, and the Child Health Insurance Program, or CHIP, they've recently come out with some technology updates that will increase how many people are assessed in your family, what they're assessed for, and failure to educate or educational abuse in 25 states is being enforced through some of these particular visits. So if you've got a family who is finding that this is what is happening in their state, I would love for you to get in touch with me. You can also get in touch with Alice Linehan or Karen Bracken or Anita Hogue. Or Dr. Victoria Young. We're all working together through the Child Abuse in the Classroom to find that family who is willing to sue so that we can get some traction going. Now, I wanted to point out in particular, in that article that I wrote about the outcome-based home, which is all centered around these updated visits, the government is determining, the state is determining how your family is supposed to be, how your home is supposed to be. So this is not giving you the freedom to say, hey, I want my family to do A, B, C, and D. This is my family doing what the government wants or what the state wants? So this is why these in-home visits are so dangerous. This is why the outcome-based health and human service visits are really a bad idea. And one of the main things they're doing is using the mental health services as a guise to align your family, not to what you want or what's the best for Johnny and Susie, but what the government and what the state thinks. And again, we can trace this back to not only the Every Student Succeeds Act, we can trace this back to the overreaches by those outside our government who want to dictate what mental health services we have. And if you'll remember, Anita Hogue has warned us for years about the wraparound services where mental health, where families are going to be aligned, and it's through these 21st century community schools, and Every Student Succeeds Act embedded those. So, I got a lot of backlash about this particular article because it was, well, Lynn, don't you know, Head Start, early Head Start, they've always had in-home visits. Well, here's why they've had them. First of all, the government has mandated them, but very few citizens have refused them. And this is one of the things that I wrote in the article. There's actually a case, it's on the books, it's from the 1960s, where a single mother actually did. She stood on her Fourth Amendment right and refused some of the in-home visits that were surrounded by welfare. The state of New York wanted to cut off her funding, and she fought back, stood on her Fourth Amendment, and stood on her civil rights, and she was able to fight back and be able to not have the in-home visits, but she was also able to keep her welfare. So, not saying that is going to be the absolute solution for what we face in 2019, but it's absolutely key that we know Fourth Amendment does include home visits because they're being treated as home invasions, and that's all what the Fourth Amendment is about, is barring the government from home invasions. All right, we also had another question, or I also had another question from Bruce, and he says, when does the system collapse under its own weight or from lack of participation? Now, this also brought up another bunch of questions that or comments that were made on the article, and that was, well, just get your kids out of public school. Now, while I agree with that, what our danger is in just getting them out is we're not protecting ourselves on the other avenues that these in-home visits do create, because whether you're in the public school system or not, if you're signed up for state health care in any way, and you've got a child in that system, whether they're in the public school system or not, this is going to impact you. So we've got to look beyond just saying, just get them out. We need to be arming ourselves with information like, how do I use my Fourth Amendment, or how do I use the Civil Rights Clause to help protect, so that, when these powers that be come to my home, I can say no. When they come to my private school, I can say no, because we've gone beyond opting out. We've got to use the law against those who are trying to use their illegally based laws against us. So that would be the lack of participation part. As far as when the system collapses under its own weight, well, that's an excellent question as well. And here's what I would say to that. We've got to force the system to collapse. If it's pulling all our kids out at once and protecting our families as we're doing it, that's fine. If it's we stop paying tax dollars to the school system because it is taxation without representation, if it is in any way where we can revolt to take back locally, statewide, and federally, if there's any way we can implode the system, it's repealing Every Student Succeeds Act. Now, that has to come from a federal level. But we've also got to storm our governments at a state level, because every one of the states locked into the Every Student Succeeds Act with their submission to the federal government through their state plans for Every Student Succeeds Act. So again, the states have to act on their 10th Amendment right, which is to tell the federal government to go pound sand down a gopher hole. Until we do these types of things, it won't matter what educational choice we're in, we all are going to be in some sort of danger. If not immediately, then pretty soon. Remember, page 17 of the Every Student Succeeds Act clearly stated school choice is a moot point, and how it stated it was that all education must be aligned to the same post-secondary readiness standards as those laid out in the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. Now let's dissect that for just a moment. All education does not simply mean all public education. It means all homeschool education, all parochial education. It means all private, public, charter, and any combination thereof. Alternative schools, micro schools, hybrid schools, online schools. I'm telling you, it's taxation without representation, and it means that all education is supposed to be the same. And it's not about academic prowess. It's not about workforce readiness. This is coming from a health standpoint, because the government wants to control our health care, lock, stock, and barrel, and they're using clauses and programs related to the Every Student Succeeds Act to pull this off. So, if you haven't seen the article, I'll make sure that I post that particular article in the comments section for this particular video. Go back and look at it, read it, dissect it, look at what's going on in your state. Remember, over half the states are using education abuse or failure to educate as a stopgap for some of these in-home visits. And if you're not educating the way the government thinks, you could be in trouble or you could lose your child. Now, that might seem far-fetched, but I want you to know this is serious stuff, okay? The Every Student Succeeds Act uses a label in a mandate, and it's called at risk. And all at-risk children have to be brought up to college and career readiness standards. Any teacher who is not teaching to college and career readiness standards has to be credentialed to do so. That at-risk definition got enlarged to include children in homeschools and private schools and those outside the public system. So, again, got any questions for me? Want to see where those mandates are? Let me know. I will be more than happy to provide those in the links as well. Just remember, we've got to keep fighting. We cannot sit down. We cannot relax. We have to keep going because our families are at risk. Thank you so much, and I'll see you soon.